Thanks, Lee, and thanks for everyone being here. It's a pleasure to be in this very historic building. Decentralized AI. The title for today is AI without a master. And the first question that sometimes I get, I used to spend 25 years at Intel working in a very centralized environment, Silicon Valley. And people now in my family or anywhere, what is decentralized AI? So I'm going to pose that to this crew. And please share with us what's your take on what is decentralized AI? Go ahead.
That's a good starting question. I'll tell you what I think it's not. Just because you have an AI agent on a blockchain, I don't think that necessarily makes it decentralized. I think decentralized AI can be used as an umbrella term, just like AI itself is. But you can have closed permissioned blockchains effectuated by AI agents. I don't think that's decentralized AI.
Yeah, and thanks, Jose, thanks, Lee, and everybody for putting this on. To me, decentralized AI comes down to one word, and that's access. Decentralized AI allows access to people, whether they're students, independent developers, small businesses, people who would not otherwise have access to compute or the mechanisms to build AI without the decentralization of these protocols. And so for me, decentralized AI is really focused on providing access to people who would not otherwise be able to afford or learn or build AI.
Well, thank you very much for having me. And I want to agree with the Kyles, but also add, in addition to access, maybe also add the idea of contribution. That decentralized AI is setting up systems that allow people to contribute to the AI network and to contribute to the governance of it.
And why do we need it? If it's kind of working well, I hear ChatGPT works. There's a lot of investment. Obviously, somebody is putting a lot of money behind it. Why does it need to be decentralized, and who benefits from that? So that's one of the conversations we're going to really have over the next 35 minutes is who benefits from that, and why do we need it if it's already, some people would say already working?
I'll jump in and then let you guys go. So for me, with centralization, and again, I don't think this is necessarily a us versus them type of thing. There's going to be amazing advances that come from centralized AI, but we do need to have a niche for the decentralized space, because that centralized space in AI is going to have natural gatekeepers to it. Not only to, as Nomini said, for the governance of it, but for who has access to it, what it costs, and what we're giving up to utilize it. And so with that sense, that is some of the reasons that we need decentralized AI. We need a space where people can come to build permissionlessly, where people can come to use permissionlessly, and where people can also come to utilize a protocol without sacrificing some of the personal privacy things that are natural with big tech companies.
I would only add that we're at the beginning. We're kind of like the infant stage of AI. So I think that it couldn't be possible to just be like, ChatGPT works for me, like, let's not innovate, right? There's I think all of us that have used any AI have thought, oh wait, there's this thing that could be better. There's just something that we could do to improve it. So I think we're really at the early stages, and it's up to us to all kind of think about new ways to make this work better for us, because the costs of it not working are really high.
Yeah, and we should only be limited by our ideas with all the potential this world holds. So great, a chatbot works. We've all dealt with chatbots, whether it's the AT&T service chatbot online. It's a good example or a good chatbot. But this conversation is beyond chatbots, right? It's about the access Kyle talked about earlier. It's about that development. It's about that participation in pursuit of a larger goal of controlling the content you consume and controlling the data you give up. So I think great, it's working, but there's still far more to be had.
Absolutely. And this conference is a lot about Bitcoin and crypto and digital assets. What does this have to do with crypto? What is the intersection? What has AI to do with crypto?
So I work for Hedera, which is a layer 1 blockchain or a hash graph network similar to a blockchain. And AI products are being built on us. So that's the connection between a DLT and an AI. And the kind of things that they're doing are really, really interesting. So there's this one company, Prove AI, and they allow you to tokenize data that goes into the AI. And when it does that, it allows you to show the provenance of the data that's going into the AI. It allows you to turn on and off permissions for use of the data that goes into the AI. It allows you to do micropayments. So using crypto, like real-time micropayments for use of that data, if it's like copywritten information or proprietary information. And then it allows you, because it's tokenized, to pull out the data if it's not used. So that's like just one of the clear examples of the connection between AI and DLT.
So one of the things that DCG has been involved with is a core principle in our subsidiaries as well, is empowering decentralized infrastructure. In order to do so, there needs to be, an incentive structure that is part of that decentralization, so that you're, in a sense, spreading the wealth. That's part of what empowering is taking wealth from just maybe going to one entity and trying to disperse that among others. And so what crypto does in this system is it provides a sort of oil to the system. It provides that incentivization for people to use. And so it allows people to earn maybe through utilizing a specific protocol. It allows them to earn maybe of building something of value that a consensus system deems valuable. Or it allows you to earn, have incentivization to use and maybe to give, if you decide that you want to give some of your personal data, maybe there's an incentivization for you to do that. And this can be across compute or personal data or simply building something of value. So the whole point of crypto being, oil to some of these protocols is to allow people to share in the incentivization of the network, as opposed to it just going maybe to one particular company. You're allowing the people who use the system to not only share in it in building, but share in terms of earning as well.
I think the goals of both worlds really coincide. Crypto / the digital asset world being a transfer of value. People want control over that. They don't want the intermediary. And then decentralized AI, again, people having control over the content they consume, the data they put out. So at the core, the values are the same between the two worlds, is what I see at least.
Yeah, absolutely. I read that about 90% of all investment in AI related to new research and development occurs from 5 or 6 top companies, right? The famous, the OpenAIs and Microsoft, Google, et cetera, right? So if that's the case, how does this make it more accessible? Who's going to invest in a different way? Does this open it up to others to participate?
From our angle, absolutely. Some of the decentralized AI protocols that we focus on, so our subsidiary, Yuma, they focus a lot on the BitTensor network, which I know you're familiar with, and there's a wide variety of these, but they're allowing people to have access to building, utilizing, that would not have that access before. And so when it comes to compute power or access to an algorithm, right, you're distributing the governance of the network across the people who are utilizing it, as opposed to it coming from the top down. And so we do see, those 5 or 6 companies, some of them will talk about open source, but they're really just giving a window into what they're doing. The people that are utilizing the network have no incentive structure to earn. They also have no ability to govern how it's used. And so what we're doing is distributing that governance, distributing the ability to deem what's valuable, and that eliminates a lot of bias when you have a large group determining as opposed to just a few people at the top in some of these companies.
Yeah, as far as access goes, you have no borders, no boundaries. Anyone can get involved. And because of that, it can reach areas that are typically underserved and would not otherwise participate. People in areas that aren't the typical tech hubs, such as Silicon Valley or Austin or New York, or abroad even. We saw this with crypto, and we're seeing it with decentralized AI. There's a propensity to get involved no matter where you are, and if you want to get involved, you will get involved because you're able to. And if you can't get involved where you're currently located, you'll go somewhere where you are able to.
Yes, if it's open and permissionless and no borders, then supporting this wouldn't this enable China to keep the race going and be ahead of us? Open systems, do those favor our adversaries?
Well, I would argue an adversary like China does not agree with those core values of open access, permissionless, a user and consumer controlling the content they consume and the data they put out. We see this on a daily basis. Adversarial nations are surveilling their own people. So I would say surely they wouldn't want their citizens to access something like this. So I think the pursuit towards innovation in America and other countries where there's a natural and grassroots effort to achieve decentralized systems would outweigh whatever advancement an adversarial state would make. I'm not sure what China's efforts on decentralized AI are at the moment. I'm sure they're looking into it, but perhaps they are, perhaps they're not. I wouldn't want us to presume they're not.
Well, it does seem like AI is the new arms race of our generation, and I think maintaining competitive advantage is primarily important to the United States. My daughter just did a school trip to China. She's been studying Chinese since she was in kindergarten, and she had to get a VPN in order to access anything from China, and you can just see the great balkanization between China and the U.S. with that. So they are developing their own AI systems. The United States and the rest of the world are developing them, and I think that maintaining focus on the importance of it, control the rights, IP enforcement of those rights throughout it is going to be really important as we think about our ongoing relationship between whether it's not China or any other competitive counterpart.
So I have about a decade's experience working national security issues in the U.S. government. In my experience, the CCP, the Chinese government, is not going to be one that endorses open, decentralized systems. Certainly not for the public. We saw that with the internet. We specifically can point to Bitcoin in recent history of banning a decentralized network that perhaps would run contrary to the party's control over their own digital yuan. So this is certainly not something that I think they would embrace for the people of China. They may have an obscure government agency that they have a group of people who is focused just on figuring this stuff out. But I do not think it's something that's going to be pushed out to the Chinese people to embrace. And I think that's an incredible advantage that we have, and that just like the Bitcoin network is an ability for, you know, people around the world to have like a sort of digital belt and road to combat the sort of Chinese physical infrastructure belt and road that has been built. I think that decentralized AI is the next step in that digital belt and road for sort of the more Western, open, US valued system. And so that is something that I've been focusing on from a national security realm, is what does embracing an open system mean? And in history, when you look back, it is the nations that embrace those open systems that make the best technological advancements. And that's why I think it's so important to protect decentralized AI and have a real safe space and a niche and a sandbox here in the US, so that, you know, we get the great advances from the large tech companies, but we also have the sort of independent developers as well who can make outsized advancements.
Thanks. I know DCG has been a leader in that space, and your Barry Silver talks about this as the internet of AI, right? So in a way, comparing this stage of open source and decentralized AI to the internet. So the internet is open. Anybody can participate. You don't need a license to be on the internet. So what policy or regulatory framework applies here, right? I'm trying to ask these questions as a moderator that is, you know, unbiased, but I'm very much, you know, trying to make sure that we're here visiting to avoid over-regulating these things, because then I don't have a job anymore. I have to go back to the big 5 companies. So in order to keep my current startup going, I'm definitely into, you know, less regulation. So maybe a question for Kyle Upton. I sorry to put you on the spot, but what does the Committee on Agriculture have anything to do with this?
Yeah, no, so that's a great question, because every time I tell someone what I work on, AI and blockchain, then they're like, where do you work? It's like, oh, the Agriculture Committee. And they're like, what do you work on? Where do you work? It's this back and forth. Why do we care? But I mean, just like any tool that evolves, AI is a tool. We've all been using AI in some capacity, whether it's predicting the next word you're going to text somebody, or clicking on the bottom right of a cell in Excel and dragging the formula down. Anything like that, it's very relatable. So AI doesn't have to be this up in the sky, scary dystopian thing with antennas and satellites and all this. So when you think of America's farmers, ranchers, and producers, you have increasing input costs, whether it's food, fuel, fertilizer, labor, et cetera. You have them deploying pesticides, deploying fertilizer. They want to mitigate costs, mitigate waste, make their operations more efficient. AI is an attractive tool to deploy in the field for that reason. It can cut down on that waste. It can increase and optimize outcomes. So that's why we're looking. We want to be ahead of the curve. Rarely does government lead, right? And it's really the responsibility of industry to innovate and lead. So to your regulatory approach question, I think it's important for us to keep core principles in mind rather than having very prescriptive regulations and rules. For example, if you're adhering to a core principle, there may be 5 different ways to achieve that. So it affords you the flexibility to innovate. So I think core principles is something that we should all really consider.
So, unsurprisingly, I completely agree with Kyle. And I think that the US should have a standards-based approach, a principle-based approach. And this is in sharp contrast to what the EU has done, where they've adopted regulation already on AI, which is interesting since most of the AI companies are not in the EU. So they're really trying to just control American companies. And by taking a principled, standard-based approach, you can allow for innovation that addresses the concerns that people have with AI. So one example is Equity Lab, which is in partnership with your former company. So it's with NVIDIA and Intel. And it allows you to do and have an audit trail for the pieces or the decisions that are made within an AI. So you can go through it. It's really important when you think about agentic AI. Like, you know when a decision's made and why. And so there are tools that people can develop that can maybe address, some of the concerns people have with AI moving forward.
To further Nomini's point, we saw in derivatives markets at the start of around 2000, we saw products being tailored to meet market demand, to hedge unique risks or risks that had not before been hedged in derivatives markets. The Commodity Futures Trading Commission, which our committee oversees, takes a principles-based regulatory approach. As long as participants are adhering to core principles, they can innovate and tailor products to meet consumer needs. And it's a happy world, right? They're adhering to the core principles, people's needs are being met, and new products are occurring in the market, and we have innovation, and it snowballs. I also want to point out that these are all my personal opinions and experiences, and I do not represent the opinions of the chairman or the members of the committee.
Thank you. So if decentralized AI is so awesome, can we come up with a couple examples here to share with this crowd? What are some interesting applications right now running on a decentralized AI network? I have my favorite. I love BitTensor. That's kind of what I dedicated my life to do now. But there's many other examples. So what is the is there something that is doing better in decentralized than centralized? Anybody want to give it a shot?
There's a wide variety. Some of the most interesting protocols are being able to share computing power, and there are several that engage in this, including BitTensor. And what's so interesting about this is that you are distributing access to what is quickly becoming one of the most valuable assets, not only in a technological sense, but a geopolitical sense. We've heard numerous times about how important compute power is, and the energy that supplies it. And so by decentralizing access to that compute, it's not only the highest bidder who can own, a large, massive data center, but you're distributing access to maybe some buyers of last resort, or to people who are looking to tinker and learn, or build, or study, or do whatever they want to do using decentralized AI. But now they can get that compute power from maybe underutilized machines. Maybe there is some wasted energy or machines that are not turned on in a wide variety of places. And so now, when the owner of a GPU, for example, whether it's used for video games or whatever, they can now put that on, sort of like Airbnb, and somebody can come out and rent that. A student can, a professor, a small business owner, a farmer's son who is trying to build something to help their dad and would not otherwise have any access to compute power can now tap into this system, and the person putting it on there can earn, have an incentive structure to earn for putting their compute power out there. And the person who's building, potentially, if they build something of value, will have an incentive structure to earn as well. And so, this is one of the most promising aspects, is taking something that is usually for a very rich company or people who are in the data center business, and now it's distributing it to people who have no access to that before. Or had no access to that before. And so that is one of the most promising, I think, use cases with these protocols.
I'd like to offer another example. One of the builders on our network on BitTensor is doing a deepfake detection engine, right? And these become almost like an open contest, right? You put out there an algorithm that does deepfake detection. There's many open source ones out there. And then the community of builders, permissionless, right, join in that effort and get incentivized and get paid by competing with each other to improve it. And their solutions have outperformed the state of the art out there, right? I don't know if it outperforms the state of the art that is held in the back rooms of a lot of the three-letter agencies, of course, or maybe some of the private companies in Silicon Valley, but definitely they have created something of value very, very quickly that anybody can build on. And so it is this kind of building on top of other people's work that has made this AI revolution kind of move so fast. And I'm a practitioner in this space for many years. Before AI was interesting, I was working on GPUs. GPUs were used for pixels before they were used for AI. If you remember, gaming, yeah. Same hardware. And if you think about it, people were not, trying to get the juice out of these things in the same way. So now that you have all these applications, it's really interesting to see how people are creating stuff very fast. So like 1 year in AI is like 7 years, right? It's like dog years because everything is moving very, very quickly. Because we're in Washington, D.C., what can Congress do to play a role ensuring that all this can be done ethically? Because a lot of people are concerned, this AI stuff can get out of hand and it can create a picture of me at the beach with a penguin and I was never there, And maybe that's not the worst example, but Kyle, well, any of the two Kyles, or namely, any ideas on, the ethics of all this, and if it's decentralized, how do we get in front of that?
Well, I think I would reiterate the core principles approach and proper behavior. But I think ethics is inherent to decentralized AI. And I think that because this is all consumer driven, this is under the control of consumers. They are only giving up the data they want to give up to get only the content they want. They're not getting this flood of content that's being monetized by clicks and views and engagement. So I think ethics is really at the core, and I think all of us are in this room because we see how the status quo might not be working for some or many or all, and agree that there's a better way to do this. And within that better way, ethics and values are reflected. Again, you can apply ethics to anything, whether it's environmental impact, for example. This content is being created on demand because, again, it's consumer driven. So you don't have all this unnecessary compute being used, shoving content in users' faces that they never asked for in the first place. So if someone has ethical concerns about the environmental impact, that's one example that can mitigate that.
I would suggest that Congress stick to principles, standards, and regulate activities and not technology. So in your example of you as a penguin, right? Like what is the harm? And regulating that through the activities law. So is it libel? Is it slander? Is it harassment or disparagement? Those are the angles to go through to address something rather than addressing the underlying technology. Because if you try to regulate a technology that's rapidly changing, you'll either stifle it or you'll be so far behind that it's irrelevant.
I'll just add, I think it's important to, kind of from a 30,000-foot view, to make sure that we are regulating, policy-wise, regulating holistically. And that means that we want to avoid some of the pitfalls of like money transmission, crypto laws at the state level. And having 50 different laws and jurisdictions for how AI can be accessed, used, built, all these is going to be a headache, and it's going to set the U.S. back. So I think whatever we do, it's going to have to be at the federal level, and it's going to have to apply to 50 states, so that it's not some sort of hodgepodge and it picks winners and losers based on where you're located.
Yeah, I know this has been brought up earlier today in a couple panels about how Europe overcorrected in a way, or perhaps it's just part of the ethos of, a consumer-centric, privacy-first approach, and that has created an environment that we cannot innovate in, right? If I'm a builder, building is messy, innovation is messy, and if I have all those guardrails, I think back to I think it was Bill Gates or something like that. He said that he was fined $1 million for doing something with some software, and I said, well, what can I get away with for $2 million, right? Because at some point, you know, this became almost like a tax, right? So if I have to worry about all those guardrails, I'm not going to be innovating and staying ahead of China and others. So I think one of the call to actions here is to, you know, let us innovate, let us build, and keep it so we can keep it here, so we don't have to go build somewhere else, right? The other question I have here is for, and thank you, Kyle, I'm borrowing your notes because I was going to go on my phone, and I think that would be rude, is what does decentralization matter for enterprise AI? So for enterprise, right, if this is decentralized, isn't that messy? You know, I used to be on the other side, being the centralized guy saying, oh, don't let these amateurs work on it. We're the professionals. You know, and you have the same thing that happened with Linux, right? Linux is open source, decentralized. And there's even famous quotes by Steve Ballmer, former CEO of Microsoft, calling Linux a cancer, right? And now Linux is obviously you know, one of the fastest growing parts of IBM, of all people, right? Right? Through their Red Hat subsidiary. So how some of these parallels work here with AI, and what needs to happen for enterprises to trust it and use it?
One of the unique characteristics of the Hedera network is that we're governed by large enterprises and institutions. So IBM, Google, London School of Economics, Magalu, Standard Chartered, just a wide range of entities participate in the Hedera governance network because large enterprises see the value of decentralization of DLT because it provides a stability and an ability to innovate. So our network is open sourced through the Linux Foundation, through the Hero project. So just inherently, these enterprises are already there. So when people are building AI products on our network, it's a complete continuation of their interests. And seeing that utilizing different entities and working across the agencies, there's a stability and a potential for growth that you can't have in a siloed organization.
I think it's important I think a lot of these companies need to remember how they were founded, right? Most of the largest tech companies today, in fact, almost all of the largest tech companies today, were founding using an open internet and people in their garages, right? And so they weren't founded through a corporate structure, which can sometimes be siloed, and you can have an echo chamber, and everything's, you know, maybe in an R&D department. With a decentralized system, you have people building and governing themselves, and so if something's not right, the incentive structure is going to switch to a different, you know, maybe subnet if we're talking about BitTensor, or a different project. You're going to get feedback in real time. People are going to let you know, hey, this sucks. So I think it's important for them to remember where those companies came from, because if it wasn't for an open, decentralized internet, they wouldn't have been able to really be founded in the first place. And so I think there's a great advantage to tapping in, at least to some degree, to a decentralized network. It allows you to get much less biased feedback, and I think there's been a lot of contributions to technology that have grown out of the decentralized side. It doesn't mean they should, you know, throw their company away. Of course not. They're going to play a major role. But there needs to be a sort of sandbox on the decentralized AI side where people can build, because I'm pretty certain that some of the next breakthroughs are going to come from that decentralized side, not just the centralized one.
I would agree with both. I would simply say it makes the enterprise more in tune with what the people want, the consumer demand.
Yep, absolutely. Sometimes I teach on this subject, and we do a survey before class just to see kind of where people are, you know, try to please the crowd a bit. And half the people think AI is going to kill us all. The other half think that this will solve every problem. So, and then we talk, you know, spend 8 weeks talking about how neither here or there. So if AI gets out of control and there's no single throat to choke or whatever, right? Who's accountable when something goes wrong? Who do you subpoena? How do you press the kill switch? So decentralized stuff like the internet, like Linux, is that genie out of the bottle kind of thing. That's a tough one I didn't want to ask because I think we're all having, trouble still figuring this out, to be honest. I think this is, there's not an easy answer, but I just wanted to open it up because we have 3 minutes. That way we can talk about this for a moment.
Yeah, this is a difficult question, and this is something that really does need thought. One thing I will say on behalf of the decentralized side in this sense is that the internal governance, when it's owned by a wide variety of people, when a protocol is being used and something's being built within that protocol, and there is an internal incentive structure, if there is a malicious actor, they're not going to get the validation, the miners, all the different people that are involved in the process of the protocol to really support them. And so I think there will be a strong element of self-policing given all of the different people involved in a decentralized system, as opposed to some of the risk from a centralized system where you may be able to send somebody a subpoena one day, but they have a lot more freedom to do something malicious, right, and keep it kind of quiet for as long as they need to, whereas the other one, you're kind of exposing it to sunlight all the time.
On September 11th, I was working at the Treasury Department, and I served on the first task force on terrorist financing, and we were looking at how do we control money flows that are completely decentralized, and it was really an opportunity to look at what are the existing utility tools that we have, and to think about how do we use that to shut down a hawala or a money transmitter, and there were tools there. We just had to work with it, and so I think we're now in a new world, and we think, okay, what is that activity that we're trying to stop if an AI is taking over, and then look at what are the existing tools. We might not need to create something new, but just look at what are the current abilities and how do we apply them to this new challenge.
Yeah, I mean, like Kyle said, you mitigate the risk of something going wrong due to the very nature of the tech and the network. And if someone is misusing it, we have the tools, right? Fraud is still fraud, whether it's done on the blockchain, whether it's done with crypto, whether it's done via mail or wire. Fraud is fraud. That's just plain vanilla fraud. So if it's, again, looking at core principles and bad behavior, if it fits into bad behavior, it's wrong no matter how it's perpetrated. Fraud and manipulation of our markets can be done with anything, and it's wrong.
Absolutely. I think you can think about the Bitcoin network, is designed in a way that is resilient. It has not had a 51% attack or anything like that. And nobody seems to be able to find the Satoshi guy, right, to go shut it down if something went wrong, right? So in a way, this is all working, and here we are. Well, thanks everyone on the panel. Thanks everyone for your attention. You thought you came from an AI conference or a crypto conference. You got both here. Thank you so much.